What's up, everyone, and welcome back to The Flip Side, a gyto podcast where we break down, share, and challenge flip perspectives and insights on different hot topics in education. This episode is part 2 of a 2-part episode and a continuation of last week's conversation. So if you didn't tune in last week, be sure to check out part 1 before listening. But without further ado, we're diving in and picking up right where we left off with part 2.
So I think kind of the conversation is where the priority is of what teachers are having their students do, what they're doing. And one thing that you both kind of brought up a little bit was Chromebooks or technology. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of instructional time is wasted on technology. Mm-hmm. And when you're thinking about, I can't fit that lesson in, or I'm thinking of like Eureka Math or something that a lot of our schools use, where it is a lengthy lesson. And there's a lot in there. You're in no means expected to do that all. So if that is the expectation, that is not how it should go, number one. But number two, there's also times where I've been in classrooms where it's just like, what is the intentionality of this technology? So I want to spend a little time talking about that because I think it's a hot topic that'll ruffle some feathers. As Christy sits
Let her
up,
step up.
She's like, I'm ready on technology. Obviously, post-COVID, we've seen the benefits of it, but there's so much wasted time and instructional minutes of students on technology. So Christy, I'll turn there.
Well, let's talk about the instructional block, right? Like if you are a school that doesn't have a formula or scaffolded structure of how teachers should be teaching their students with the curriculum, then we need to implement an instructional block. That means the first 20 minutes or so is a review, or it's introducing the topic, getting background knowledge, as you mentioned in another episode. And then also the next part of it should be your guided practice. That's when you as a teacher get to get up in front of your students and you get to do some Kagan strategies. Can I say Kagan? Okay.
Yeah.
There's a little plug on Kagan. Yeah. And, some group activities. And then that's where you get your students engaged. And now you've just taught them the new content for the day. And then the next part should be a we do scenario. We're doing the I do, you
classic, proven,
right?
moldy but goody.
So now, there's no time for any downtime.
Yeah.
I haven't said any downtime yet, right? And so now we're doing the we do, where now we're taking whatever content I just taught you all, and now we're going to practice together. I'm going to model what it looks like. And then the last part of the block should be either individual, which of course the last 5 minutes should always be individual for a quick summative assessment, but the part before that could be either partner work or group work in differentiated groups, or it can also just be the teacher walking around and monitoring as students are doing that exact practice of that concept that they just learned. So there's no time within that 2-hour, let's just say ELA block, where there should be any downtime.
Yeah.
Now, we do have a program for progress monitoring called IXL. I know schools use other things. And there's always a time for them to get on there and remediate, especially in those small groups.
And that's on the computer.
That's over. But there should only be probably tops maybe 20 minutes of computer time in a session.
Yeah, and that's rotating because they could be doing that while another group is meeting with you or something like that.
Small group.
It is not and I've seen so
everyone on the computer at the same time.
I go into a classroom to go model or to go observe or do a quick pop-in, and then all of a sudden I'm like sitting there for 25 minutes now, and they're still on.
And I think everyone listening, and then they're probably lying if they say it's not them, at one point of time, you have been at a point
get on the
where
computer.
you're like, I need to get this, I need to get to this past this 10 minutes, and they're doing something like that program that's meaningful on the computer. Like that there's time and place for what that looks like. Yes. And we've all been there in a time where we're like, oh my gosh, we need to do this.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen. That's reality of what we do. But it's also the intentionality of what they're doing on the computer that I think wastes a lot of time, because they're clicking through a lesson, they're finishing, and they're like, what do I do now? And now we're in this all world of games and other, and that's not going to maximize your kind of growth for your students.
I think a big thing too in the last 5 years, technology was, you had that computer cart, a couple computer carts in the school, and then you got a computer cart in your grade level. Yeah. And now we're fortunate enough to be one-to-one, but the pressure to use that technology from the higher ups, because it does cost money, obviously, nothing's cheap. But then how are they using it? Are they using it effectively? Because if they're not using it effectively, it's a waste. And if it's better to do stations without the tech, or, I don't know, a computer booting up, and just the time wasted, it can be counterproductive.
Coming from the admin herself.
But at the same time, like when I go in and I do an observation and then I have to give feedback on how the technology was used, if I'm even there at the time of it being used, I'm not going to mark down a teacher if I wasn't there.
Oh, yeah. And
if I didn't see it,
Is it even being used effectively, number one?
Right.
And number two, maybe that was really intentional. It was based on where they were in the lesson. Maybe it was a level up, a level down. It was strategically planned, hopefully. But also, what is the time spent on that, and what is that actually doing for student growth? Because if so, why do we even have the teacher in the room? Like, why couldn't it just be
That's
And
the-
COVID proved that's not going to work. Like,
exactly.
I remember when I was graduating, everyone was like, you're going to be lucky to have a job in 20 years. Well, that pandemic proved that a computer can't do all of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, kudos to these teachers and students that do virtual, like, willingly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
It's not going to work. All right.
Instructional block is everyone needs some structure within their academic time.
And I think sticking to that, no matter what it is, whether it's from your school, maybe this is what this looks like, maybe you're setting it for yourself. I think a lot of schools traditionally probably said, this is your ELA block, and then you figure out how you're going.
Oh my goodness,
prepare
that's crazy.
your
It's so
curriculum,
sad.
resources, things like that. Maybe they're fortunate enough that someone has guided them to this is what the ELA is like minute by minute, by playbook, but setting that for yourself and then sticking to it. I know for me personally, I love to talk. I'm going to put on a good whole group lesson at the beginning. I'm going to kill it. I know
The best part.
Right, exactly. I know that about myself, but I have to be strategic that it's not about me, it's about them. I have to strategically cut myself off with my planning and my delivery of they might be in it. It might be the best lesson I've ever done. It's time to move to this and how that works. That's the only way you're going to kind of maximize that time. All right. Any last minute tips for just maximizing that time? We talked about limiting technology, using your plan time effectively. Talk about kind of the time. You talked a little bit about collaborating with others. How do teachers find time for that if it's not given to them per se? A lot of schools don't have the luxury of, we're going to have this PLC or thing like that. Or maybe they do, and it's not used effectively, and they feel like it. How can they maximize time working together?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just about to say, and maybe you are on the same mindset as me, but on Tuesdays, we give our teachers a planning meeting day where they come and meet with us and we give them a PD. Or they're meeting about data, and that's with our testing coordinator. Or they're meeting about MTSS and what multi-tiered systems of support looks like in their classroom.
Is that during the school day? Okay.
Yep, and that's during their 45-minute planning period. So we do take one of the five a week from them for that, but it's intentional. It's very jam-packed because it is only 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And it even so runs over into the next specials, and then of course the days kind of rest. But for the most part, we do make sure to give them intentional PD at least once a week.
But with that being said, we also require them to have one grade level meeting per week. And I feel like that forces them to do that collaboration. Now, there are times where they might ask admin to come in because maybe some things are going on that we need to work out. Or maybe they'll have one of the coaches come in and, hey, we're having a hard time with planning our math stations right now or our reading small groups. Like, can we get some help with that? So I feel like that's one part. They're required to have that grade level meeting where it's not ran by admin, but they also they submit their minutes to us so we can kind of see what they're spending that time doing to see if they need some guidance a little bit more. And I think it makes a difference.
Yeah, and I also think like pacing too, right? Like if teams are not on pacing, especially because of recent events with hurricanes and things, we now had to catch up, right? So then what that looks like is maybe someone who understands the pacing and the curriculum and the standards and benchmarks helping teachers out to fast track that pacing, what that looks like, because you do not need to do every workbook page in your curriculum book.
Right.
Not what it's there for. We are teaching to the standard. We're teaching to the benchmark. So if that's also a time where, the coach or other leader in the school can, on the back end, help with the pacing so that the teachers know exactly where they are with where they're teaching and how they can, make sure that they're on track for, of course, the standardized
I think that's critical.
Yeah, that's key.
The pacing. Oh my gosh, because there's so many teachers who think they have to do everything, and I always felt so much better when I was like, oh no, we don't. That's actually not. Nope. Look how far
Quality
we
is better
are,
than
guys.
quantity.
Yes.
Right.
Quality over quantity.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the most critical part when you are planning is teachers who often say, I don't have time. Can you model what this looks like? I can't fit it in. I can't do this. I can't do that. There's so much gray in there and like junk necessarily that can be removed. Like maybe it doesn't match the standard. Maybe it's not going to move your students. And also knowing if they've mastered something based on what you see, we don't need to
Why are you still redoing it and doing it?
And I think that's hard for teachers because they hear, and I've, as an administrator, said this many times, this is how we're doing this, where we're doing it. But knowing that you're the professional for these students, you know where they're at, you know what they need. You are going to prescribe them exactly what they need to be successful based on that standard, using these resources to get there. It is not a 31, 32, next lesson, kind of mindset. It's where are we and what are we going to do to kind of get there? That's going to only maximize your time, maximize your minutes, and then maximize your student growth, which would be the goal.
And to kind of go back and add a new idea too, I feel like with planning, it is so important to differentiate and have your small groups. I don't care what subject it is. It doesn't just have to be reading. You can have small groups and get that small, with like 3 or 4 kids to where that targeted help that they need, you can match it up where it doesn't have to be all 20 kids.
Yeah.
And I think,
and then also another realm we can hit is the extras, the extra paperwork that needs to be filled out. You need to come visit my office to come sign this form. Can you please go visit this teacher during your planning because blah, 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 blah. Oh, can you please go watch this class because you have planning right now. So when that happens and you're a teacher, of course you feel all this pressure and all of this anxiety.
Yeah, because you had one plan and then now it has shifted
and
that.
due dates, right? And all these due dates.
Yeah.
So then, of course, what happens is those move up on your to-do list in the priority red area. Once you get those done, the end of your planning is up.
Yeah.
And then you're exhausted and you have no desire to stay after school to do the things that you should have been able to do on your planning. But I think that comes back to leadership too, because the leadership in your school, if they are constantly taking that away from you, that's a problem.
Yeah. And I think I think this conversation in general is a real problem.
Yep.
Teachers. It's always been a problem, I think.
Yeah.
But especially now as more expectations are there and things are changing and gaps are getting bigger. So then everyone wants to put a little more intensity to it. It's always a conversation of, well, where am I going to find the time to do this? And I think it's just prioritizing in a smart way what there. So if there's a teacher listening and they're like,
answer those parent emails first.
Oh, I love that tip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Elaborate.
There's a teacher listening. Answer that parent email first because parents and students are priority. You want to make sure that everyone feels confident and comfortable in your classroom. And that is
prioritize that as there and then move on from there. So that's done too. That also helps with that. But last minute tips, if there's someone listening, they're like, I literally every day feel like I didn't get through that. I don't have time for this. How do I do it? What tips would you have for them to kind of prioritize this instructional time for their day?
I would swear by the sticky note. I always listed when I had a hard time using my planning the way it should have been done. I listed 3 things on a sticky note that I had to get done in that planning period. Now, I had another giant to-do list that I could always look at if that sticky note got done, but I chunked it. And in the end, it's going to be there. It's not going anywhere. It'll get done. Give yourself some grace.
I think another piece of information is, of course, communication with parents, but then, of course, like planning for differentiation. A lot of your time in your planning should be looking at the resources that your students in your class that need the remediation should be. So you should be pulling, if applicable, other grade level resources so that you can pull that small group and get those lowered, 25% kids in your classroom to that bar that they need to be. Because by the end of the year, if we don't do those things, we're going to be so behind that those lower 25% in our class are going to still be at the grade level prior.
I think that's a good point because, I don't mean to cut you off, because when you're thinking of, okay, this is my curriculum, this is what I have to do, it can be overwhelming. It's a lot. There's a lot there. But when you start thinking of, these are the 30 students that I have, this is what they need, and I know there, and then you're planning intentionally for, these are my students who are on level, these are my students who need this, it becomes a lot easier because you're specifically seeing the impact of it, where on the flip side of that, you're not necessarily seeing the impact.
On the flip side.
Yeah. It's just like a shot game of coffee that you could just like, anytime we say the flip side. But if you're not seeing an impact of things like that,
where's it at?
Because you're not focused on the student, right? So if we want to see that, oh, this was worth my time, and there's an impact of that, we have to make those priorities in advance to make sure that we're prepared for that.
And teachers, if you're nervous or scared to ask leadership for support or help, I promise that if you go up to them and you ask, I need help looking at my data so that I can provide better instruction for my students, they will be so excited.
Yeah.
They'll be so happy.
And if they're not, at
That's
the end
not
of the
the school
year,
for you.
apply for a new job. At the end of the school year, apply, because
Come find us in Tampa.
Right, yeah, they're hiring. They have spots right now, actually. But seriously, you can find someplace where that is welcome, because that is so true. A coach or administrator, now, they're just as overwhelmed as everyone else, but the fact that you prioritize that as, hey, I know I need to do this, is going to be key.
It's their job to figure it out.
Yeah.
You don't have the time.
I love that. So battle of the minutes, I don't think it's ever going to be a solution of what that looks like.
Yeah.
We put a lot into the ring on this one. What that looks like, who is fighting for what? Is are the computers winning? Is planning winning? What does that look like? But at the end of the day, it's looking at your students, prioritizing what is best going to serve them, and making your moves based on that. So thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you guys.
Tell them where they can follow you all for more to stay tapped into you.
Yeah, you can follow us on Instagram at 2 Tampa Coaches.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning into another episode of The Flip Side. New episodes air every Monday, so make sure you check them out. You can also watch the live in-studio version on YouTube. Get your teacher on YouTube, so search The Flip Side on there to see Bri and Christi live in the studio. We loved having you guys again.
Thank you so much.
Here. Until next time, we'll catch you on The Flip Side. Bye, guys. Have a great week.